Greetings, it's Eric Packer, the naturopath. Thank you for tuning in to this presentation. We're going to talk about Candida Remove today. In particular, we're going to talk about the ingredients in Candida Remove. I get so many questions as to why Candida Remove has this or that ingredient. Why did I use this and not that? Why didn't I include this one thing to make it better? So this video is going to answer a lot of questions. I don't have a habit of singling out single herbs and using them in large amounts in a supplement thinking it's going to fix a problem and kill Candida and eradicate your problem. It's not really going to happen. It's not a good thing to do. There are many good adjuncts and things to add to your diet, but never think that one single ingredient is going to be the silver bullet, that it's going to cure your disease, because it doesn't really work like that. You need to have balanced actions in the body. You don't just want to target one particular type of bacteria or yeast. This is what pharmaceutical companies do really well. They have a narrow band of action, they've got a super powerful band of action, and they often have massive side effects and huge collateral damage. Well, that's not what Candida is all about. Companies, not necessarily pharmaceutical, even nutritional companies, they look also at switching off particular symptoms with herbs. And sometimes some of these supplements can be so powerful that they can give people quite strong reactions. And again, that's not what Candida is all about. Let's talk about black cumin seed. Go and have a look at Dr. Google yourself, and you'll find that the black seed does have some limited effects on yeast infections, or Candida in particular, but it's very disappointing for most people who use it. So don't pin your hopes up on black cumin seed for Candida eradication. It's great to use in cooking, and most people who say that it's fantastic for Candida eradication are the people who are actually marketing the black cumin seed. So I've used it. Patients weren't getting any results. I let it go and I moved on. Aloe vera. This is a fantastic herb for the bowel in particular. It's great for autoimmune disease of the bowel. It contains many different types of amino acids and starches and minerals and vitamins that help heal the gut. It actually works quite well on the cells in the lower part of the colon. It doesn't have really any antifungal action, but it's great for assisting the bowel in eliminations. If you don't have regular bowel motions, you really want to do something about it. Try aloe vera. Many people these days have only a bowel motion perhaps every 2 or 3 days. It's not uncommon to see that in America these days. Arabinogalactans. These are found inside leaves, roots and saps of many plants. It's a type of a starch. It's been gaining a lot of popularity in recent years. There is some limited evidence that it may have a good effect on the immune system. And it can also help to balance cholesterol, for example, and even prevent colds and relieve allergies. I know that it's good for sore throats because I used to use it for that years ago with patients. It's particularly good as a prebiotic, and it has shown to increase levels of lactobacillus, beneficial bacteria. Research now suggests also it can increase production of short-chain fatty acids, particularly propionate and a little bit on the acetate side. It also can lower the colonic pH and decrease creatinine and absorption of ammonia in the digestive system. So some studies have shown that it can upregulate the immune system to keep opportunistic bacteria like Klebsiella from becoming really a big burden in the gut. So it can help reduce those sort of levels, particularly if they're overgrown. And Klebsiella is something I've found in people, for example, with autoimmune disease, particularly autoimmune bowel disease like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. So try and eat foods that contain the arabinogalactans. You'll see here on the slide, you're seeing a picture of leeks, but there are many different vegetables that contain this starch-like compound. Tomatoes, pears, carrots, there are quite a lot of them. Even bok choy, I believe, has arabinogalactans in them. So remember, eat foods that contain it. Don't look for this in supplement form. The same goes for prebiotics. I stopped using any supplements with prebiotics years ago. I found them to be not effective for people. I found they caused aggravations with many people. People need to be eating foods that contain prebiotics, not taking supplements that contain them. Let's take a look at chamomile, a very nice cup of tea. There are different types of chamomile. It's a beautiful little plant that belongs to the daisy family. This is not a bad one to use for bloating, for cramping. It's also good for children, for colic, for example. It's also good for diverticulitis. It's a condition where you get small pouches in the small intestine, in the large intestine due to inflammation. So chamomile helps to relieve pain, bloating, gas. It dispels that in the gut. If you've got pressure or buildup of gas, for example, chamomile is perfect because it helps to dispel that. Most of the studies I've looked at regarding chamomile essential oil and not the tea. So the essential oil is very concentrated. But I can tell you now, you're not going to kill Candida by drinking chamomile tea. You need to drink literally gallons and gallons of it to get some effect in that respect. So, but if you want something for gas, this is probably one of your best ones to take. Let's talk about wormwood, or the Artemisias. There's Artemisia annua, for example. There are many types of wormwoods. So wormwoods contain a chemical known as thuone. So thuone can make people go a bit loopy and a bit crazy. Nothing unusual these days, is it? But you've got to be careful with this product, with this herb in particular. Some people even smoke it as a narcotic. I mean, how crazy is that? If you go to WebMD, for example, or you look at these medical sites, you'll start to realize that WebMD says it has a toxin. But in the hands of a herbalist, somebody like me who's trained, who knows how to use it, it's a very good herb to use. I've got a good video on some tips on how to use wormwood on my channel if you have worm problems. So you might want to go and have a look at the Eric Bakker Naturopath YouTube channel, and you'll be able to track that video down. I'm not targeting so much worms with people. I'm targeting other kinds of parasites, and particularly dysbiosis, what we used to call dysbiosis. And now to a high degree it's called SIBO, or bad bacteria that have gone bad. So we also want to target yeasts and a lot of these bacteria that can turn from good to bad, and different types of parasites that are non-worms. So Candida will have a good effect on worms nevertheless. But if you want to treat worms, use something called wormwood. Okay? If you want to improve the function of the liver and gallbladder, use wormwood because it's a very bitter herb. If you want to improve the function, particularly of the small intestine and the stomach, you can use wormwood. But you need to use wormwood under the direction of a qualified and experienced herbalist. Because I did mention the thuone, it is a toxic herb. You have to be careful how you use it. So don't just go flying down the shop and buy wormwood and start taking it, because you could get very sick by doing that. Now remember also, this is not effective against a yeast infection. It's effective against worms. This is not called Candida wood, it's called wormwood. Let's talk about thyme leaf oil and rosemary in particular. So these are 2 of the 8 herbs that I put into the multivitamin formula. There's a backbone in Candida Rebuild. I think it's around 300 to 400 milligrams. And it's basically a combination of various herbal medicines we put in here. This is going to inhibit the gut, and it's going to stop bacteria from taking off. So it's just a nice low-grade back end to the multivitamin to keep the gut at bay. So I didn't want to put this one in the Candida Remove. It would be too much. I considered adding it, but it got beat out by other ingredients that were far superior. The thyme and the rosemary are outstanding to have in very small amounts. I encourage people to grow these herbs like I do and to actually use them in cooking on a daily basis. This is what people of the Mediterranean have done for thousands of years. This is what stops dysbiosis. This is what will stop a yeast infection from taking off. Unfortunately, people don't really eat foods with a lot of thyme and rosemary. Many people tend to eat foods full of sugars these days, and of course that's how they encourage yeast infections. Let's look at milk thistle. St. Mary's thistle, Silybum marianum is the name for milk thistle. This is excellent for liver conditions. It helps to repair damage to the Kupffer cells or the liver cells. And often these cells become damaged and knocked about by disease or alcohol or different pharmaceutical drugs. Silymarin isn't silly, but silymarin is the actual active in the silybum, right? Silybum marianum. So this helps also to promote breast milk production. It can even help prevent cancers in some people. It protects the liver. It stops a lot of toxic, onslaught to the body by protecting the liver. But is it an antifungal? Does it have antifungal properties? No. And that's why you're not going to find this one in Candida Remove. If you watch my videos on liver cleansing for Candida, for example, and you decide to do a liver cleanse, this is one of the best herbs to take for liver cleansing. Let's talk about fennel seed. Still a little bit more to add regarding the milk thistle. Just because you see milk thistle or another ingredient in a good Candida formula someone else has made, it doesn't mean that ingredient will do much for you when you take it, right? Check who made the formula. Have they got experience? Why did they add St. Mary's thistle into the Candida formula? Were they trying to make it a quasi or a partial liver cleansing formula at the same time as an antimicrobial formula? Many people get confused when they formulate and they put all kinds of ingredients together. So think carefully about what you buy. Let's talk about fennel now. So fennel, if you do your research online, you'll see that research has shown that it can inhibit different strains of Candida that have grown resistant to antifungal medications. And you may think, wow, this is powerful stuff. It can get rid of my yeast infection that's resistant to antifungal drugs like fluconazole, for example. But really, any plant with antifungal properties will work on drug-resistant yeast because yeast simply can't become resistant to natural medicines the way that yeast becomes resistant against pharmaceutical drugs. It just doesn't really happen. And there are many studies that can prove this statement I've just made. Be careful what you read on the internet. Fennel is an awesome herb to use in cooking, and it has antifungal and antimicrobial properties, but it's not a cure against Candida in my experience. Right? It doesn't, like, in inverted commas, wipe out Candida or eradicate it. This is, again, a little bit like chamomile. It's great for using in the gut, for dispelling gas, for dispelling flatulence, because it has an essential oil that helps to break up the gas in the gut. So if you want to use it for its flatulence-reducing properties, go ahead. The extract can be used from anyone from infants right through to elderly people, and it's great for that, as I just mentioned, for the gas. It can also be used to reduce symptoms of non-ulcer dyspepsia and flatulence in infants and young children. So but be careful using the powdered fennel seed because it can be a bit on the laxative side. Ginger is one of my favorite woody spices which I use in cooking. In fact, last night we made up a beef dish with lots of fresh ginger and garlic in it. Now, ginger's been used by Asian people for many thousands of years. It raises the body temperature slightly, and it can have a little bit of an antifungal effect. And it's a good adjunct to use on top of an antifungal compound. One of the reasons I put this one again in Candida Rebuild and not Candida Remove was because it has that nice slow background action on the gut, and it works quite well also to allay symptoms that may come about through Herxheimer reactions or inappropriate amounts of Candida Remove that people may take. The ginger is going to help to calm the gut down to a degree. Cinnamon. There are many studies that have been conducted in the last 10-15 years in particular regarding cinnamon, regarding its antimicrobial and antifungal properties. So most of the studies really were done on cinnamon oil though, which is a much more powerful version of the cinnamon, as you can see in the picture, the powder. This is a good one for helping to control sugar cravings, and also it starts to level out blood sugar spikes. So it reduces a little bit of inflammation in the body, it calms the gut, and it has also a small amount of antifungal property. It's quite cheap and effective, so there's no excuse to use it. Again, cinnamon is not an ingredient I would put in Candida Remove. Let's look at aniseed. So don't be confused with star aniseed. It's a totally different spice. So aniseeds have a subtle flavor. And again, aniseed and fennel seed are good again for the gas, similar kind of a seed. Greeks and Egyptians have been chewing aniseed for a long, long time. They use them as natural digestive aids to soothe indigestion and also to balance blood sugar levels. So some cultures do chew on the aniseed for a fungus overgrowth, but it's also particularly good for promoting normal blood sugar levels by helping to balance pancreatic function. I do like it for its antifungal and antimicrobial properties, and that's why I put it in Rebuild. It's not in Remove. So if we look at Jatoba bark, some people over the years have asked me why I don't put Jatoba bark in, this is a beautiful plant from the Amazon. And again, people really single this thing out. They say, look, this is going to be really powerful. Well, again, it's just not one of those things I want to put in there. I've seen so many inferior products come from the Amazon, and so many products like cat's claw that have been basically mucked around with. You're getting inferior bark, you're getting inferior plant samples. There is so much corruption now in the herbal field, it's incredible. Same goes for an ingredient called beta-glucanase, which is an enzyme I sometimes see in subpar Candida supplements. Patients have told me they've tried supplements that contained it and got no results at all. In fact, all they got from those formulas was gas and bloating. So these ingredients lack what I call the oomph, or the real power. I just don't consider them effective when you have a serious Candida or SIBO infection. And you don't know what you're buying when you're buying these sorts of herbs, particularly from suppliers that you don't really know. You could be buying completely inferior products, or you could buy adulterated herbs that have had other herbs put with them that are so powerful that they'll make you sick. Remember, just because something works in a lab or a petri dish, it doesn't mean it's going to be effective always in your digestive system against a yeast infection. All right? So when you introduce something into the small or large bowel, anything could happen, particularly if you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes the concentration required to get a therapeutic effect is so high that it becomes an irritant when taken internally or causes aggravations, or it doesn't work at all. And I've seen that repeatedly with cat's claw, because the samples can range from the sublime to the ridiculous. You can have very weak or extremely potent cat's claw. Let's talk about licorice. Glycyrrhiza, glabra, or licorice root. One of my favourite sweets or candies is actually salted licorice, which is quite a naughty thing to eat, but licorice is particularly good for the adrenal gland. Ancient Egyptians used it traditionally in medicine and cooking, and it's been used later on in China and Greece. Ayurveda physicians used it also for a long time. There are over 1,250 remedies alone in Ayurvedic medicine that contain licorice as an ingredient. This is an awesome herb with many beneficial properties, and I encourage you to use it, but don't think you're going to wipe out a candida yeast infection just by drinking a few glasses of licorice root tea every day. It doesn't work like that. In my opinion, it's the best use for improving respiratory health, but also it works well on yeast infection, on adrenal fatigue. But you need to be careful with licorice, because licorice can also increase blood pressure, and it can promote mucus formation, but also it's what we call a demulcent herb. So it's quite good for sore throats and helps to soothe the throat and the stomach. Tea tree oil, Melaleuca alternifolia, the Australian tea tree oil. One of my favourite herbs to use topically. So this is being used traditionally for respiratory tract infections. I've written at length about the Melaleuca in Candida Crusher book. So traditional Australians, for example, used it. They would crush the leaves and boil it and inhale that. It was also used on cuts and wounds and bites and spear wounds. Snake bites, for example, in Australia are not uncommon, and tea tree oil was used quite a lot for that. In the 20s, I think it was 1923, there was an Australian chemist called Arthur Penfold, and this was a very popular antiseptic to use back then. In fact, doctors used something called carbolic acid, but tea tree oil was so effective. It was government supplied to soldiers who fought. Australian soldiers who fought in the First World War would take a bottle of tea tree oil with them for shotgun blasts or for war injuries. That's how effective it was. So what Penfold discovered when he analysed many different natural plants is that the Melaleuca alternifolia was 9 or 10 times more potent than carbolic acid was. So the government became very excited, and it was in widespread use in the 1930s and 40s. Lots of people had bottles of tea tree oil in their house. This was pre-pharmacy, pre-pharmaceutical days. This is before all the chemical companies started coming along and wiping out all of these beautiful natural medicines. This should be used in hospitals today. It's actually quite criminal that it isn't, because studies have shown that yeast cannot really cope with tea tree oil. It's far more effective than many, in fact, probably most all antifungal agents I know for topical use. So people use it for sore feet, for burns, ulcers, blisters, infections, insect bites, sunburns, all sorts of things. It's also used for gum disease, ear infections, athlete's foot, jock itch. I usually put 1 or 2 drops on a clean toothbrush and brush my gums with this, and then I spit it out. This will give you a beautiful mouth and clean tongue and clean gums. Don't drink it. Don't use it internally. Don't use it internally. It's an external product. So the best tea tree oil you can buy comes from a company called Thursday Plantation from New South Wales in Australia, of course. I think it's one of the most amazing natural medicines you can actually use for fungal diseases, whether it's jock itch or vaginal thrush or toenail fungus. This has helped wipe out so many yeast infections on the skin, so many over the years. It's incredible. I've taken it myself internally, but it's not something I would recommend the average person do. You need to have knowledge of essential oils before you do that. If you've got itchy skin or toenail fungus or any kind of yeast-related skin issue, could be ringworm, for example, this topical, meaning on the skin, tea tree oil is an excellent thing to use. I've got many videos on my YouTube channel that you can check out later that talk about tea tree oil. For internal use, however, I prefer oregano oil, or oregano oil versus tea tree. I find patients can tolerate more of it, which is one of the reasons I didn't include any tea tree oil in Remove, Candida Remove. I found it extremely potent, standardized oil, which I have actually put in Candida Remove. So we've got certain types of oregano that we find in the Mediterranean that actually exceed tea tree oil in antifungal activity. When we have a look at oregano, of course, we've got the carvacrol. We've got a very powerful ingredient in there. And this is one of the most outstanding natural medicines you can use for yeast infection, of course, is oregano oil. If you do use tea tree oil, make sure you use the Australian Melaleuca alternifolia. It's got a very characteristic smell about it. Hunt down Thursday Plantation. It's the only one I recommend you buy. Reishi mushroom. Many people know now about the powers of medicinal mushrooms. Mushroom extracts have become very popular with people who suffer with conditions like, HIV, AIDS, autoimmune diseases, hepatitis, even cancers. So they improve different aspects of your immune functioning by reducing inflammation and stimulating the humoral system. Or in particular, the killer cells get stimulated to attack rogue cells in the body. It's used a lot for cancer for that reason. Because it's a mushroom, people think, oh no, I've got candida, I can't take this, it's a mushroom, I'm going to get even worse. So you shouldn't be thinking like this. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mushrooms are perfectly fine as long as you cook them properly and you don't have them raw. I mean, mushrooms are not a problem on a candida diet generally. If you cook a mushroom in olive oil or in butter, you should have no problem at all with your candida infection, in spite of what everybody says on the internet. Oregon grape. Oregon grape's quite an interesting plant. It's named the state flower of Oregon by pioneers who harvested on the Oregon Trail. It's a traditional medicine, I believe, of the American Indians, and it's been used to treat everything from diarrhea right through to psoriasis. I read an interesting research paper in 2011 that reported that berberine, which is an alkaloid and one of the prime ingredients in the Oregon grape, it has the ability to inhibit the growth of different types of Candida species, including Candida albicans. So this has got a broad action, this one. So I call this one a shotgun. It's quite effective anti-parasitic, antibacterial, and antifungal. It stimulates the liver in particular, and it's bitter. So it allows the bile to be secreted. So when the toxic bile comes out, it softens the stool. It also works on mucous membranes in the vagina, the mouth, in the stomach, and the small intestine, where it induces secretions of enzymes and stimulates various immune factors that kill fungi on contact. So people who regularly have berberine as an antifungal have a much easier candida recovery. So don't take an antifungal that does not contain berberine, because you're missing the boat if you do. We use berberine in candida remove, but we use a standardized berberine, which is a very powerful and effective form of berberine to use. So now we talk about Chinese coptis and philodendron bark, also called gold thread. And just like with Oregon grape, coptis, which is gold thread, as I mentioned, gets the attention of people because it's got berberine in it. The philodendron, I think it's called the cork tree, the armor cork tree. It's one of about 50 or 60 fundamental herbs used in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. It's traditionally used for meningitis and, for example, I think it's the bacillary dysentery, pneumonia, tumours, cancers, jaundice, liver cirrhosis, many different types of conditions. Stick to berberine HCl because it's 85% standardized. It's much, much more powerful than the coptis or the philodendron bark. So the vitamin C and omega-3. I first wrote about these things back in 2013, and a lot of people do underestimate how important they are when it comes really to getting your health back on track. I've seen so many candida and gut disorder patients in 30 plus years of practice whose immune systems were compromised due to yeast or bacterial overgrowth. So how do you know if your immune system's compromised? Well, look at your symptoms. A telltale sign is a recurring mouth or mouth problem, mouth ulcers, or a throat yeast infection. But it could also be a low-grade joint pain. It could be skin problems. But the more the yeast is spread beyond the gut and is wreaking havoc to other parts of your body, the more this tells you, it tells me in fact, that your immune system has been overrun and can no longer deal with the problem. The other big issue is when people have major immune dysfunctions, they've got a very poor and impaired and weak adrenal axis. So the hypothalamus, pituitary and adrenals form the HPA axis. This system becomes very weak and ineffective with continual disease and stress. This is one of the key reasons I like people to take vitamin C powder as part of their recovery. Cayenne extract. Cayenne, so people sort of know these to be hot peppers. So in vitro studies on cayenne are found to be antifungal activity against many different types of fungal strains. Up to 15 or 16 strains get taken out by the cayenne. But if you take too much cayenne pepper, you get stomach burn. It's like you've had a meal with a lot of chili in it. And if you like spicy food, use cayenne powder. But if you decide to use the cayenne extract as a tincture, It's clearly novocaine extract in liquid form. Be very, very careful. Don't buy things labeled pepper extract or capsaicin extract. That stuff's much too powerful. So people use that kind of stuff in pepper sprays and make really crazy hot sauces that you see on YouTube where, people often get nauseous and sick after. So I often used cayenne as a liquid extract, but only would put just a few millimeters in a large bottle. Cayenne allows also the acceleration and uptake of other ingredients in a herbal formula. But if I'd put cayenne in Candida, I would have had a lot of problems with patients complaining of very, very bad gut function. So I did not put that in there for that reason. So let's talk about the Chinese skullcap now. This is used quite a lot in Asia. It contains many active flavonoids that are known really to reduce inflammation in the body. It's been used traditionally for many, many years in the East, really, to treat gut disorders. In test tubes, skullcap is shown to have strong antibacterial activity against E. coli, Staphylococcus, Salmonella, Listeria, and even H. pylori, would you believe it? So this herb was traditionally used to clear toxins and support liver function. Early research shows it can be highly effective against viruses, particularly the ones that cause hepatitis. So it's a good herb to take, but I don't consider it as strong as things like garlic extract, grapefruit seed extract, caprylic acid, or other ingredients I've specifically chosen for Candida remove. So many people talk to me about diatomaceous earth. I think all practitioners go through a stage where they try things on people and later they think, what the hell is that thinking about? Can you clean your body with diatomaceous earth? I don't really think so. I actually think it's a load of crap from my experience, from where I'm sitting. I know I've written about it in Candida, in the Candida Crusher book. I've used it myself. I did get limited effects for some people, but in my opinion, it's not really an effective or valid therapy. If you don't think you can clean your body with diatomaceous, I don't think you can clean, your body with this sort of powdery stuff any more than you can clean it by grinding up just sand or whatever and just swallowing that, right? In spite of what you see. If you look at a lot of the science sites that recommend that you can wear masks when you handle it, so it doesn't get in your eyes or nose, they tell you not to breathe it in, but then it's okay to put it in your mouth. So I'm not really a big fan of this stuff. Don't forget that kitty litter is made up out of diatomaceous earth too. And I've known some patients to get very sick after doing a detox and cleanse with this stuff. Marshmallow root is very nice. Again, it's a demulcent herb like licorice. So I've used to use this one a lot in the clinic for children. It's great for coughs and colds and for soothing. So if it's good for coughing, if you've got an irritation in your throat, it stops that tickling sensation. You could use it alongside stuff like peppermint oil if you've got gas or bloating. You could also use it alongside glutamine if you want to help, heal the lining of the gut. It's quite good for that. It's good, particularly good for an inflamed bowel and autoimmune disease. So all inflammatory conditions like gastritis, peptic ulcers, enteritis, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, it's handy for that. Leaky gut, diverticulitis. And also I would use this one in formulas for the urinary tract. So that's why it's often part of it. But it's not really effective at killing yeasts or bacteria, not at all. So that's why I would not really use this one in the Candida remove. Amla berry or gooseberry. This is quite an interesting one. The taste is described as sometimes as sour, as bitter, as strong. And in India, it's eaten with salt and red chili to enhance the palatability of it. So research into amla shows it's somewhat effective against Candida glabrata and Candida tropicalis in particular, with some action on the Candida albicans. In one study with rats, scientists wanted to see if amla flavonoids, tannins, and phenolic compounds would help rats who were given alcohol. After 1 month, they found the liver tissue was much healthier in rats who were given high doses of amla berry. But is it a good antifungal? No, and that's again why it was not really used in Candida remove. Ashwagandha is a wonderful herb, also known as Indian ginseng or Withania somnifera. It's a good blood builder, this one. It's good for weak people, I found. So women who've got, had a lot of period issues or people convalescing, coming out of disease. It's a good one for building up a person. So it promotes sleep. It has some antifungal properties, but it doesn't have the power that other antifungals have. So I would use it more as a building herb, not really as a cleansing herb. Peppermint oil. Wonderful. I first learned about peppermint oil many years ago, about how handy it is to have a bottle of peppermint oil if you go traveling. Try and get a little bottle of this and keep it in your handbag. If you ever get a tension headache, rub it around the temples. Just keep it well away from your eyes. But if you put that on your temples, you'll find it most handy if you get a bit of stress or tension. So drinking peppermint tea eases cramps and spasms in the gut. It's very good for that, but it's not really antifungal. So again, it wasn't used in Candida Remove. Pumpkin seeds, very high in zinc. It also contain levels of omega-3. Very, very handy. Many people claim that pumpkin seeds actually have a good effect on parasites in the body. So grinding up pumpkin seeds and having those with perhaps some ground up beets and carrots is particularly good for different types of parasites. But again, it's not really effective in terms of having a broad spectrum, powerful effect on parasites, yeasts and bacteria. So that's why it was not included. Slippery elm bark powder. This one soothes. It's again a demulcent again. It's a soothing herb, a bit like the licorice and a bit like the marshmallow. Slippery elm bark powder is getting much harder to get. When I first started studying, you could still get it in health food shops. If you're going to get it, make sure it's a pink color. It's quite sort of, when you mix it with water, it's sort of quite mucousy looking, but it's very, very soothing for the gut. Some American Indian tribes used to feed the baby for the first year just on this slippery elm bark powder. When it comes to an antifungal action, it's not really going to do much there, but I did put it in the rebuild. I put in Candida Rebuild again because I wanted to build up the gut. I thought it was a great idea to have a little bit of a demulcent activity going on there as well. Magnesium is one of the best dietary supplements you can take in this day and age because of what it does to the body. It plays a key role in so many different enzyme reactions. It's superb, whether you've got a yeast infection or not. It's required to drive well over 300 enzymes. It's a crucial mineral. So anyone with muscles, with a heart, which most people have got, is going to benefit from magnesium. Your sleep will improve, your bowels will improve, many, many aspects of your health will improve. So this is one I certainly recommend people to take. So let's now talk and wrap up a few points here. Be very careful when it comes to treating a yeast infection that you don't think about a narrow band of action. You need to think about a broad band of action. You need to think about the best possible natural medicines that are today on the planet that have been clinically and scientifically proven to really work together holistically to wipe out high levels of bacteria, yeast and parasites. Candida Remove took a long time to formulate, and many formulations were tried before I perfected this particular formulation I have now. I'm very proud of it. It's not a silver bullet by any means, but the feedback we've been getting now from thousands of people is very, very encouraging, with many people claiming to have never had a product as good as Candida Remove before. I think part of the reason why this product is so effective is because it was born out of a clinical situation, not out of a formulation sense in a laboratory. I didn't play around with petri dishes when I made Remove. I work with many patients. I work with patients who'd been taking many, many products for many, many years, and that's how this product was born, through clinical experience. So I hope you've gained some useful information from this presentation, and next time you do consider an antifungal, antimicrobial, antiparasitic product, have a look at Candida Remove. It's one of a kind. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and also have a look at my YouTube channel. Thank you.